Hi everyone, it's Lena with Intuitively She TV. I am here to do a video about tarot for beginners. So if you are inexperienced, if you haven't even purchased a tarot deck yet, or you just do not know where to start, then this video is definitely for you, okay? For more tarot videos, click subscribe, turn on your notifications, and there's also links on how you can get in contact with me. Okay, so getting started. So when it comes to tarot, when it comes to pulling cards, it can definitely feel overwhelming, challenging. It can be confusing to a lot of people. Some people just do not know where to start when it comes to purchasing a tarot deck. So one of the basics when it comes to purchasing a tarot deck, you can get a deck online. There are some times where people receive tarot decks as a gift, but these days people are shopping online, or they're going into small shops, local shops, to find a deck that best suits them. Now, when it comes to picking out a tarot deck, what is key is going for a tarot deck that you are most intuitively drawn to. Okay, so if you're online and shopping for tarot decks, you know, when you're drawn to a tarot deck that like kind of speaks to you, and that kind of stands out more than other tarot decks, that is a good sign that that is definitely a tarot deck that you want to work with. There are hundreds of decks out there, so it's definitely challenging on how to pick one that's right for you and one that's going to be easy for you to interpret the meanings and the symbolization. So one of the most popular beginner decks is the Rider tarot deck. Usually comes in a yellow box. There may be some other editions, but this is definitely a perfect tarot deck for beginners. The symbolism is very easy to interpret. There's lots of colors. There are human figures in this deck. The price varies, but with this deck there's lots of colors, there's lots of illustration in the deck, and so it's and like I mentioned, that there's human figures. There are some decks that have just animals, and sometimes those can be a little bit more complex, but the Rider-Waite is definitely a great beginner deck. Let me show you a deck that I have with just animals. You might see some, you know, animals like owls, snakes, things like that. So, and this is with the Wild Unknown tarot deck. This is also a beginner deck. It can be a little more intermediate, a little bit more advanced, but at the same time, it's not hard to interpret the meanings when it comes to this deck. And this is actually the first deck that I've owned when I began my tarot journey. So I like to give myself a challenge, you know. I am a Virgo. Virgos tend to do that. So this deck was definitely drawn to me at first glance, and it definitely worked well with me. And I love using this deck when it comes to self-readings and when it comes to doing personal readings for my clients. Sometimes you'll run into a deck that you just do not connect with. Sometimes we purchase a deck and you're just not getting the connection that you were hoping to get. And sometimes it can make it very hard to work with the cards. I did experience that with the Gilded Tarot deck. It's a great deck. It definitely is, but it did not connect with me on a level that I was looking for. And so I kind of steered away from using this deck. You do not want to force the energy when it comes to understanding your cards or making the card work for you and not against you. So sometimes it's best to just start with the Rider Tarot deck because it's just the most easiest, and about 8 out of 10 tarot readers have started with this deck. Like I mentioned, the human figures make it really easy to interpret the cards. But let me just get into some more things here when it comes to learning tarot. Now, you don't want to start giving readings, self-readings or readings to your friends and things like that. You want to get to know the deck that you purchased. Each deck has 78 cards. Take some time alone to just get familiar with the deck. Looking at the illustration, looking at the colors, just flipping through each card and kind of getting a visual, see if you can tell a small story, or what I like to call it, like a small trailer of each card. That's going to help you better understand the cards when you're actually given a reading. So before you give a reading with someone, it's best to just take time, go over the deck, look at the symbols that you're seeing, look at the face expressions in the human figures when it comes to the cards. Getting to know the deck, familiarizing yourself with the deck is going to be one of your best tools. I do know that the decks, they each come with a guidebook. I currently don't have a guidebook handy. I think I have it in one of my shelves, but usually there's like a small pamphlet that comes in each book, and it has the interpretations, the meanings, and things like that. So it's very helpful to kind of check your guidebook when getting to know the cards. Maybe when you're spending time with the cards and looking at each one, you can compare your interpretations with the guidebook. But it's best to always go with your intuition, because your intuition is what speaks volumes and what speaks to you. And that's what really helps you interpret the cards. There's really no right or wrong answer. Everyone interprets the cards a little different. So spending one-on-one time with each card is the best way to get familiarized. Also, when you're going to start pulling cards, a 1-card daily pull is the best way to go. When I started my tarot journey, I pulled 1 card a day. So I'd wake up in the morning, be thankful for living, breathing, things like that. Do some meditation, just getting ready for my day. And so I would then just pull 1 card just to get an overall energy and an overall feel of what the energy is going to be for the day. Some people like to do a card pull at the end of the day, so then they can reflect back on their day, and then it helps them interpret the cards a little better. So like with this Judgment card, let's say you had a long day at work and there was some conflicts with certain individuals, or there just was a lot of disagreement in the workplace. And then let's say something came about where, based on the findings of the conflict, it gave a resolution, and it kind of swept all the problems away, and kind of lifted some weight off your shoulders. And then pulling a card at the end of the day, getting the Judgment card, it kind of helps you reflect back on, okay, like that makes sense about what happened at work earlier today and things like that. So sometimes people find it easier to do a card pull at the end of the day versus when they're waking up. Some people just like to challenge themselves. They will do the card pull in the beginning of the day, and then go about their day. And then as the day plays along, they can intertwine the energy that they're receiving, and then they can go back and visual the cards that they pulled that morning. And that's another way that they learn tarot. Either way, it's totally up to you. Whichever works best for you is what you'll want to go with. Everyone has their own flow of things and their order of things, so always work with what best works with you and not against you, okay? But when you do your card pull, just ask a question to your ancestors and your guides. What is the energy for today? What's the intuitive message for the day? And as you are visualing your day and what energy is going to arise, or the feel of the energy for the day on that card you're going to pull, you just want to shuffle your cards. There's no right or wrong way how to shuffle the cards. Everyone has their own method, okay? Just give the cards a few shuffles. You can speak loudly to yourself and say, what's the energy for today? You can say it in your head and just get a feel of when it's time to stop. Some people like to cut the cards before they pull one for the day. Some people like to divide the cards into 3 piles before pulling a card. Whichever method works best for you, it's totally fine. As long as you're pulling 1 card a day, that's how you're going to best learn the cards that you're dealing with. It's also best to not buy so many decks at once. Limit yourself 1 to 2 decks so that you can get more familiarized with what you're reading, because each and every tarot deck is different. Each and every tarot deck has its own symbolic and different interpretations. So you don't want to go on a frenzy where you're buying this deck and this deck, and it's just going to make things a lot more complicated for you. So always stick to 1 or 2 decks. And like I mentioned, the Rider Tarot deck is a great beginner's deck. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it in bookstores or your neighborhood shop, and it's a definite good beginner's deck. But 1 card a day is going to definitely help you interpret the cards. Look at the illustration when you're dealing with the cards. Look at the colors that you're seeing. A lot of cards have patterns and have different colors, patterns. They tell a lot. So pay attention to backgrounds. Some cards have vibrant colors. Some have just black and white. Okay, those all tell a story. Okay, those also give meaning to feelings, when it, situations and things like that. Lines and patterns are definitely a big thing to pay attention to. Okay, when it also comes to learning tarot, it's like I mentioned, there's 78 cards in the deck. Each card is numbered. There are large arcana cards, and then there are major arcana cards, and then there are minor arcana cards. Okay, so when it comes to major arcana cards, those cards are cards like the Fool card here, the World card, which is the last card of the tarot deck. This is actually the first card, the Fool card. So it's like the tarot deck tells a story, and this is where, if you're putting yourself in that story, it's like you're the fool here, and then the deck ends with the World card, like completeness and wholeness. Okay, so these are major arcana cards. When it comes to major arcana cards, they hold more of a long-term effect when you're doing a reading. So whenever you're pulling cards for a reading, and you come across a major arcana card, it symbolizes situation more long term, okay? Versus a minor arcana card, which would be something like the Ten of Cups, or another card like the Three of Swords or the Six of Wands. These cards are minor arcana cards. These are more of the trials and tribulations of day-to-day situations that you're going through. So so when you pull a minor arcana card, it's more of a short-term effect versus the major arcana card is more of a long-term effect and events that are taking place. So when you're paying attention to that, it'll help you interpret the meanings and what's going on with the questions that you're asking in your reading. Another thing that I wanted to point out is that there are different elements when it comes to tarot cards. There are pentacles, there are swords, there are wands, there are cups, okay? When it comes to pentacles deal more with like material things in your life, like jewelry, money, something of value. It can be your home, it can be a car, it can be, things like that. It also represents like finance, career. So whenever you have a reading where there are pentacles, think of that as like household or material gains, money, finance, career, and things like that. And this element is represented by like earth signs, like Virgos, Capricorn, Taurus, okay? And so when you're doing readings with that involve other individuals, sometimes when you're uncovering multiple like if you have like a reading where there's multiple pentacles, like the same element, sometimes that can reveal that the individual could be a earth sign. If you have a reading where there are multiple wands, there are some times where it can represent an individual that's a fire sign, like a Leo, Aries, or Sagittarius. When it comes to the wands, these type of cards are more represented with like your wishes and your dreams and things like that. So pentacles are like material gains, your money, finances. Wands are your wishes and dreams and things like that, like things you want to do in life, things you want to achieve. And that's linked with the fire element. Then we have swords. Swords have to do with air signs like Libra, Gemini, and Aquarius. When it comes to swords represents travel, represents communication. So when you have a reading, you can tie it into communication and travel. If you have a reading with other individuals that are involved, you can tie that into individuals that are under the air element, air sign, which is Libra, Gemini, or Aquarius. And then there is another element here, which are the cups. Cups deal with emotions, whether it's emotions with other individuals, internal emotions, things like that. These are linked to the water element, which is the water signs, Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio. So if you're doing a reading that involves someone, you guessed it, it could be an individual that is a water sign. When there's lots of cups, it's always dealing with the emotions, um, heartbreaks, your feelings, and things like that. So there's always 4 elements in every tarot deck, okay? And then, like I mentioned, there's the major arcana cards that tell a bigger picture, more of a long-term effect or event. And then there are cards that are like the minor arcana cards, which are any of those cards which are more short-term trials and tribulations. Okay, so I know it can sound like a lot, but when you take it one day at a time, it's very simple. Just do 1 card a day. You can then start moving up to 2 cards and 3 cards. And 3-card readings are really great because they can symbolize past, present, and future feelings and emotions, and so it definitely tells a story, and it's good for beginners when it comes to doing readings. Try reading on yourself. You can do a reading on close friends or family, which is nice. Work with 1 or 2 decks, preferably 1 if you are a beginner. Definitely pay attention to the lines and illustrations. One other thing I did want to mention is that each deck has court cards, and court cards can be slightly difficult to interpret. Court cards are cards that are referred to like a page, like a knight, like a king or a queen, okay? And these cards can represent individuals. It can represent individuals in your life. Like a page card can represent like a daughter figure or a sister or brother. Queen or king can represent mother or father figure, or sometimes in the characteristics of these court cards, and can tell a lot about the reading that you're giving. Court cards are really hard to interpret when it comes to readings, but when you do come across a court card in your reading, think of it like beginner to advanced. So a page is more of a naive individual, someone inexperienced, someone that maybe is direct with things that they're saying, but most of it is not facts, things like that. And then as you move to like a knight, queen, and king, these are individuals that are more stable, more direct, more responsible, more giving, more domestic, more authority, like when it comes to a king. So definitely refer to your guidebooks when you're dealing with court cards, and just pay attention to whether it's like a page, knight, queen, or king, and think of it as the levels when it comes to like a beginner to an advanced person, like in the household or at work. So when you're seeing a court card, pay attention to the element of that card. Like this one has that cup. Cups deal with emotions, so this could be someone that's like emotions that are all over the place and they can't control it, because the page is someone that's inexperienced. So this could be someone that cannot control their emotions. Like I mentioned with the Pentacles, deals with material gains and finance. And so this could be someone that's maybe trying to take control of their money and their career. Maybe they have goals they're looking to achieve, like with a knight, someone that's more experienced than a page, and that knows what they want a little more when it comes to their finances. And then like with the wands, deals with wishes and dreams. A queen is someone that's domestic, someone that has authority, someone that's like a motherly figure, feminine energy. So this is someone that knows what she wants when it comes to wishes and dreams, knows the things that she needs to do to get it. Just like with the king, that masculine energy, someone of authority, someone that makes decisions, someone that's about action. And with the and you tie that into a pentacle, it's like you tie that into their finances. Someone that knows what they need to do as far as their funds and or their financial gains, and how to go about achieving those things, versus a page where they're a little bit more inexperienced. So think of it as experience levels, okay, when you're dealing with court cards. Some court cards do not include page, knights, queens, and kings. Like I mentioned, some cards do not have human figures and they only have animals. And so some of those court cards would be like would say mother instead of a queen, or it would have it would say son instead of a page. So just think of it as a human figure, and think of just so it the level that the card is, page, knight, queen, or king. Just think of that as characteristics of that individual, and then just tie in the element to get a feel of the reading and the answers that you're trying to interpret. And then it'll make things a lot easier. Every day that you pull a card, you will become more familiar with the deck. Like I mentioned, try to work with one deck only. The Rider Tarot deck is a great deck. If you want to work also on your reading coming out as accurate as possible, like I mentioned, get to know your deck without just pulling cards. Start with one card at a time. If you have some spiritual items like Florida water, you can rub Florida water on each of your cards. Each card, you can just dab some Florida water on it, kind of blessing your cards. It's good to always do readings in a space of your own, a space that's sacred. Some people do readings outside, which is fine, and in nature, which is fine. But sometimes some people find that it can be very distracting, especially if you are a beginner. It's best to do your readings indoors without other individuals around so that you can concentrate more. Try not to have a lot of distractions like your TV or radio. It's best to set it's really best to set your intentions with like crystals, like a rose quartz. If you're doing like love readings, rose quartz work best. So setting those intentions and getting that high vibrational energy delivered into your cards works best when you have energized crystals, and you can just lay your crystals out in between your cards. You can have your crystals out big or small, okay? There's a China jade crystal there. You can have how many crystals you want, how little you want. It definitely sets the intention. Also, candles is perfect. They're very perfect when it comes to doing readings. It sets the tone. It helps you calm and clear your mind, as well as meditation. So if you're going to do a reading for the first time, or if you're still in the beginning stage, try to meditate for a few minutes before you do a reading. It just calms and quiets your mind, and it helps you focus on the card that you're trying to interpret. Try not to force it. Just get that free flowing energy of the card that you're working with. Don't be shocked and appalled or afraid when you come across a card that is not so enlightening, like the Devil card, or a card like the Death card, because depending on the type of reading that you're giving, these cards can symbolize something in a more positive light, and instead of something that is that easily comes off as negative. Okay, so sometimes the Death card can be an ending to a toxic relationship. It can be the ending to a situation that you just do not belong. So it can definitely mean the beginning of beautiful things. Never be afraid when you see these cards pop up in a reading. Never try to just reshuffle the cards and get cards that you feel better suit your mood or your thinking, like the Empress card, or the Lovers card, which is nice and vibrant. So just work with the energy that's in front of you, whether it's a card that's not so pleasant or a card that makes you feel joyful and happy. Okay, so I've been doing tarot for a long time, and to this day, I own a good handful of decks, but I don't have a wild variety, because the decks that I do have, the more I continue to work with it, the more it works with me and not against me. I can quickly pull one card. When you continue to work with the same deck, the energy is just more vibrant, it's more free flowing, and the frequency just shoots through the roof. So it's important to work with one or two decks. Like I mentioned, this is a great beginner deck. My deck is a little beat up here because I'm constantly doing readings for clients, but the Wild Unknown Tarot is in a more sturdy box, which is nice. And like I mentioned before, this was my first deck that I worked with, so whichever is the best for you. Some people learn faster than others, and that's okay. Okay, some people have different learning methods than others. Just go with whatever tarot deck intuitively speaks to you. Don't force it. If you're into someone on YouTube or Instagram that uses a certain deck, don't feel like that, just because they're good and work well with that deck doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. If it's something you want to try, by all means, go ahead. But you want to have that energy free flowing and not forced, because that's the most accurate message that you're going to get when it comes to interpreting your cards, and that is going to help you learn tarot at a pace that's best for you, and it's not going to feel forced. So be wise when it comes to shopping for a tarot deck. I will put all of this helpful information in the description of my video. Also, you can visit my website at intuitivelyshe.com if you would like information on booking a one-on-one reading with me. Soon my store will open, where I will have oils and crystals and lots of smudging tools available for purchase. So I definitely look forward to hearing from you soon. Leave your comments. I like to get your feedback. If you have questions, I'm very responsive when it comes to answering those. So just shoot me a comment, give me a thumbs up, like, share, and subscribe. And I hope that you have all of the best fulfillment in your tarot journey. Again, this is Lena with Intuitively She TV, and I look forward to speaking with you next time. Goodbye.